In Israel, the protests have intensified again. Thousands of people have taken to the streets. They're demonstrating against the Judicial Overhaul plan, a controversial plan being pushed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Critics say this will reduce the power of the Supreme Court of Israel. So they're protesting. And this has been on for 7 months now. The world has taken note. Even staunch allies like the US have advised Israel's government to engage with the critics. It came as a strong and rather public rebuke. So what does it mean for the ironclad relationship between America and Israel? Well, as we speak, the Israeli president is in the US and Prime Minister Netanyahu has got an invite to meet President Biden soon. Here's a report.
The more you press, the harder we resist. We are saying no to dictatorship, and it will not pass.
Make sure that our voices are heard.
Everything is in danger if we are going to be a dictator.
It will not pass. Israeli protesters are doing everything they can to stop the controversial judicial overhaul plan from passing. Since the beginning of the year, they have been demonstrating, taking to the streets in thousands to make their voices heard, because the Israelis fear that the overhaul will upend their way of life. So what is the overhaul? Its proponents say that it's a law to bring balance to Israel, to curb excessive judicial overreach, a way for parliament to be supreme. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu insists that all the resistance is misplaced.
The claim that Israel's entire democracy will collapse because of the amendment of the reasonability standard is a statement that is disconnected from reality and is meant in its entirety to scare the public for nothing.
Of course, that's not how critics see it. The overhaul will prevent Israel's Supreme Court from striking down laws it sees as unconstitutional. It will give politicians a greater say in judicial appointments, even allow the ruling party to hand-pick judges, or fire top officials like Israel's Attorney General. To critics, the overhaul would see Israel slide towards autocracy, and that's why they are out on the streets. Why they keep declaring days of disruption.
We're fighting here for our rights, and we're fighting that other people can receive rights, and not just us. We're fighting for a better country. We're fighting for justice.
The demonstrators have been met with fierce resistance. Arrests have become regular. Yesterday, the police even deployed water cannons. It seems obvious that Netanyahu and his allies are not going to budge, but that hasn't deterred the protesters.
We're trying to make sure that our voices are heard and trying to make some sense into this and see if the coalition will finally listen to us, and if not, maybe the world will and stop this.
It's a hopeful appeal, and the world has taken notice of the protests. But it seems Israel's biggest ally, the US, has decided to turn a blind eye. As the protests raged on in the streets of Israel yesterday, the country's president, Isaac Herzog, was in a meeting with US President Joe Biden. Herzog acknowledged the turmoil in Israel, but his opinion seemed contrary to the protesters' perceptions about Israel's democracy.
My heart and soul is also in Israel, in the heated debate which we are going through as a society. It's a heated debate, but it's also a virtue and a tribute to the greatness of Israeli democracy. And let me reiterate clear, crystal clear, Israeli democracy is sound, strong, and resilient.
It seems like he was papering over the cracks, trying to brush Israel's problems under the carpet. Surely the US would have seen through this, right? Surely Washington would have taken up its favorite role and lectured Israel. Of course not. This is what actually happened.
America's commitment to Israel is firm, and it is ironclad. I think as you saw from my readout of the call with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and you'll see this tomorrow when the President gets a chance to meet with President Herzog, our commitment to Israel is ironclad. And we're going to make that clear and consistent every chance we get.
Ironclad, or business as usual, overhaul or no. Kirby also spoke about a call between Biden and Netanyahu.
The call fell today. That doesn't mean that, and you shouldn't take away from the fact that they had a conversation today and that they'll meet again in the fall, that we have less concerns over these judicial reforms or less concerns over some of the extremist activities and behavior by some members of the Netanyahu cabinet. Those concerns are still valid. They're disturbing.
So despite Washington's disapproval of the judicial overhaul, Biden will meet Netanyahu this autumn. Despite the US discomfort with Netanyahu's political allies, the ties will not waver. Remember, Israel currently has its most right-wing government ever. Some of its ministers have received widespread criticism for their antics. But at the end of the day, it's obvious. After all is said and done, it isn't likely that the US-Israel partnership will change. It will likely remain ironclad no matter what.